Brandon, thank you so much for being on the show today. Greatly appreciate you being on here, having you. For those who haven't had the pleasure of meeting you, would you please share with everyone your name, your title, and what that means at CertainPath?
Sure. Great to be here, by the way, Bob. Thank you so much for the invitation. My name is Brandon Marshall. I'm Vice President of Training at CertainPath. And the training department is the ones who host all the classes, train our membership on a variety of different things, which we'll hear a little bit about. But that's who I am, and it's been really, really great.
Yeah, you guys we've had a busy year, and you're going to have another busy year in 2024. I know you guys have got your schedule out for the entire year, which congratulations on doing that. I know registration isn't open for all quarters, but the first quarter for sure. What are some classes coming up that you're excited about? For example, I was just thinking about the last year you guys rolled out a new drain cleaning class. And what other classes have you guys been working on in 23 and looking forward to in 24?
There's been so much action. I mean, you could look at the whole membership experience team and say that there was action. There's action in partner network, action in events, obviously, and then with all the coaches, there's always action. But training specifically, we're very thrilled about the way the drain cleaning class turned out. That class is unique in that it's part classroom, but also part lab. So people can actually go out into the lab and use these tools, use the materials, which is very cool. I don't think there's another thing like it. So we're really excited about the way that turned out. We also have created a couple of classes and revamped some existing classes. So I think this year we rolled out the culture-based growth class, which we'll talk about. We rolled out the developing effective managers class, which has taken off. And for those that are needing to develop that middle layer of management or become better managers, I don't think there's a better class out there. Michael Zeller does a great job with that class, and it's just very, very impactful. We redid the sales management class, which is just it was a necessary move, but we didn't know that it would be as impactful as it is, which has led the way for some other things, associated with it. So Carl did a great job in that. Revamp Plumbers Advanced, continuing to work on Service Essentials, which is going to be a brand new version of it that we're going to roll out at Expo. So people can look forward to that as well. Now, it won't be the class in the first 2 days, but it will be happening for frontline people during Expo. So that's going to be a great addition to what we're doing. So we're just constantly moving, constantly creating new things and revamping existing things. And so it's been an incredibly busy year, but like you said, we're looking forward to a huge 2024. We put just over 4,000 students through class in 23, and we're expecting to do at least that many in 24 and some increase there. So the program has been fantastic.
Yeah, it's a incredible amount of people when you think about it. But
it's a lot.
But that's not it. You guys have done, I don't even know how many on-sites, which maybe explain for people that are newer members or non-members what an on-site is and what you guys will do for members.
Sure. On-site program has been something that we've thought about for a long time. With the total access subscription, which a lot of members are involved with, you can get up to 3 people in any class you want, anytime you want all year long. It's great value. Everybody understands that and appreciates it. And we appreciate the fact that they love it so much. Yeah. But the on-site program is when you have, 10 people, 12 people that you want to train all at one time. And, that it's hard to get that many people to a class in Dallas. There's an expense associated with that. Sure. That we have offset by saying, we'll come to you instead. And the response to that has been absolutely brilliant. We can customize any class that you like, which is what we like about it, because it's specific to the needs of your team. For example, if you have a bunch of HVAC selling techs that you want to train, it's great. We can use our format and material to be able to do that. But we'll also have some conversations with the owner and say, what do you really want to hone in on in this 2 days that you have us with you? And it's been so impactful doing some team building stuff. And it took off to the point to where we thought we were going to do about 18 this year. We're going to end the year with 30. That's 30 members that have requested those things, and the requests are still coming in. It's very popular. It's very impactful. And so it's been awesome.
I was going to say, you did 30, you probably could have done 60 or 100 if the bandwidth would have allowed it. Because I've heard the demand hasn't slowed down, and everyone that ever has our people in their shop go, oh my gosh, we should have. So beneficial for everybody. So yeah, for those members looking to do that, maybe call early and often and get on the schedule for 2024. So wanted to be sure to talk about that. I'm excited to talk to you about a couple of topics I think that feed beautifully together, and it's the idea of culture-based growth, as you had mentioned a moment ago, and then building trust with your team. I don't think one can happen without the other. Let's start with culture-based growth. As you said, it's a newer class. We're going to offer it again at our upcoming expo in Dallas, which is March 20th through the 22nd. I think the 2 days before that is when that class is. Excuse me. And for non-members, Expo is basically our convention we have twice a year. We have 1,100 people to 1,500 people attend. It's a great time. But this culture-based growth class, we've done it before. It gets tons of great reviews. Brandon, for you, because you helped build out that class, what does culture-based growth really mean for people that are unsure?
So anytime we do a new class, especially something like a culture class, it comes a lot from what we hear. We are paying attention when the members say, here are the gaps, here's what we need filled. And so culture-based growth comes from the idea that there is a culture that retains people as well as a culture that recruits people. And so understanding what your needs are and being attractive to someone other than yourself. You know, we're always proud of the culture that we're built, but how do we take that culture that we've built and make it attractive to people who aren't already a part of it? And so once we base our recruiting off of who we are, then we get the kind of candidates that we like. We get the kind of people who are pliable enough to mold them into being an effective part of our team. And so, and then once you have them, how do you retain them? How do you keep them? How do you grow them within that? So it's a lot about growing people, growing a company, and growing those two things together. So it's an excellent class. Excellent class.
Yeah. It's something that culture was always something I've mentioned in this show many times, but when it was first introduced with us, I don't know, culture, what is that? What does that mean? It's a difficult thing to put your hands around. And I'd come from the old school. We were an old school organization 20 years ago. It's like, hey, it's operations. That's what matters. But the more you see other companies operate and you see the ones that sustain and grow healthily, and they grow bottom and top and top and bottom line, they are the ones that have a strong culture because they're not churning through people. They're worried about their people. And when you worry about your people, you pour into them and you get the right people, right? Like you said, with recruiting. You're going to have sustained growth. You'll have hiccups, sure, like any business does, but you're far more likely going to enjoy sustained success versus plenty of companies I've seen take off like a rocket and then crash.
Support for this podcast comes from Shue. Avoid costly cleanups on the job site with Shue's high-quality shoe covers, gloves, coveralls, and surface protection products. Shue products are specifically designed for home service professionals to keep your work environment clean and showcase your professionalism. Made from strong, durable materials that won't rip or tear, our products ensure maximum protection. We know that your time is valuable, and that's why we make it our mission to provide you with the tools you need to get the job done quickly and efficiently. Keeping your clients' homes and floors clean can be a hassle. Try Shue today and avoid the hassle. Use code.
When we talk about culture-based growth and culture, I think it starts with core values. What in your mind are core values? What do those mean? What role do they play in culture? Kind of enlighten people on those two.
Sure. Core values are the things that we stand on no matter what. And, they're not just the pictures that we put up on the wall or the words that we think are fun. And it really kind of defines who we are to people who don't know and to people who do know, because we're willing to stand by them and stick by those things no matter what. And, when you're building a culture, the first thing that you have to do is take a real honest look at who you are. And that's really what a core value is telling us, is that this is who we are. At the very core of who we are, this is who we are. and growth can come from that. And if you think about what multiplication and growth is, every living thing has the ability to do it. If you looked at an apple, a beautiful red apple, green apple, whatever you prefer, it's attractive on the outside, but that's not the sustainable growth that you're looking for. If you taste the apple, you eat the meat of the apple, it's enjoyable, all these things, but that's not your ability to produce. The ability for anything to produce is found in the seed, which is typically found in the core of the apple. And so getting to the core of who you are, that's what a core value means, is these are the things that are the truest parts of us. And this is what we want to reproduce from this core. Not just the attract things and the fun things and all that's great, but the core of who we are gives us our best chance of multiplying in a way that we can sustain it.
Yeah, I think what I've often heard from the really large successful companies, they lean in those core values because it allows their managers to make decisions based on, like they would, the owner, right? Because they know this is what we stand on. So you don't have to micromanage. You get the right people in place. They know what you stand for. They can make those key decisions. Let's talk about recruiting, because you touched on that earlier, and that's a big part of what the class is about. We talk about recruiting and hiring based on those core values. So what are certain qualities people should be looking for when interviewing people? Are there certain things that you always should be looking for? Or what's your take on interviewing and trying to get to the heart of who the stranger is sitting across from me?
Yeah. Interviewing is, it's always going to be a fun thing to do. I think there are people who enjoy it, people who don't. At the end of the day, if you do enough of them, you'll start to get a gauge on what's out there and who's out there. You'll learn a lot more about people. But I think some of the most important things to look for are they coachable, teachable, first and foremost. It's great if they're high performers, and we love that. We want them to be driven. All those things are important keys, but can they put that aside enough to learn a new thing, to take on a new thing? Because if they're not pliable, then what you're doing is interrupting your culture instead of adding to your culture. I've always said, if you want to maintain a culture, then you promote people from within. If you want to change a culture, you hire from the inside out. Now, that's typically around leadership, but it's the interview process is something that I look for specifically. I look for people who are humble. I look for people who are intelligent, and people who want to do something greater than they're doing now. I think those are some keys. And then we have to give them that greater to look at. That's how we keep them.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to put you on the spot. We'll see. But
yeah,
I loved asking people that interview others. Is there a particular interview question you like to ask that really kind of puts people on edge and go, I didn't prepare for that? And you can, who they are, and they stumble for a second, or they have to pause. But then you get some truth, I feel like, in those moments. So do you have a question or one or two you like to ask?
I think one that throws people off and they may not see coming. One of my favorite questions to ask, whether it's in an interview or whether it's just with a person, that really kind of gives me an insight to who that person is. I like to ask, when you were in kindergarten and the teacher asked you what you wanted to be when you grew up, what did you say? It's not common.
Yeah.
But most of them have to sit back and look, and it forces them to go, okay, what did I say? But you're going to get a real answer, because nobody's going to fake that. I wanted to be doing exactly this. No, you didn't even know this existed, right?
Yeah, right.
People will say, I wanted to be a veterinarian. I wanted to be a nurse. I wanted to be a cowboy, a football player, whatever it is. And that gives you a little bit of insight. That if somebody says that they wanted to be a vet when they were younger, or a nurse or something like that, then I can immediately assume about that person that that's a person who desires to help other people. And if that's what I'm looking for, then it's good. If that's going to be a good fit. But that's one of the questions I ask. And then if it's a leadership position, I always ask, is it more important to develop a person's strengths, or to develop their weaknesses?
Okay, speak on that a little bit. I'm intrigued.
Well, so we have a tendency to admire the strengths of people and give them one area to use those strengths, and that's important. I believe that a person's strengths should be pushed to the forefront always.
Yeah.
But then there's the weaknesses, and is it more important that we develop those or that we just lean on the strengths? I'm curious to what people's response to that is. It gives me an insight to what type of leadership they may bring, because I don't think we can ignore our weaknesses, and I don't think that we can skate by on just strengths. I think both are equally as important. So it's always an interesting answer to that question, and
Yeah.
it tells you a lot about a person.
I like that. I like that. Let's fast forward a bit. I mean, you cover a lot in the class. I just want to touch in on some of the subjects. And I think we did that obviously with the interviewing. But one thing I'm always fascinated by is how do you know when you have maybe the wrong team member on the team, or it's just someone going through a rough patch, right? Someone that maybe they're having an issue at home, or they're dealing with a sick parent, or something where they're not 100% focused at work. But so how do you know when it's time to cut bait with someone that's just not on the right? They're not. They shouldn't be on the bus, versus they're just going through a tough time. How do you kind of figure that out? How do you handle those situations?
Yeah, that's a hard one to deal with, because I mean, obviously there were good things about them that made you bring them on. There was some performance there that you were happy about, and suddenly that performance is not there. There could be a lot going on with that, but I think first and foremost is knowing that person on a level that's not just measured by what they're achieving. Because if you don't do that, you're never going to get to what the real answer is. If you don't take the time to develop that relationship with a person, I mean, there might be a very high-performing technician who's been doing great for years. You kind of have to look at the whole body of their work and not just where they are in the moment. And I think sometimes we look at what our needs are as management, and we look at the goals that we're not going to meet because, and we get so ingrained in that we forget that there's been this entire body of work that at one point was great. So I think that it's just a matter of approaching that person, having a real conversation with them, doing your best to give them what they need to get back on track. But I always ask myself these two questions. Have I done everything that I can do? Have I given them the proper training? Have I given them the encouragement? Have I been patient? Have I, all those things? And two, how is it affecting the rest of the team?
Right.
Because at the end of the day, you've got all these people who are depending on you, not just the one. And so there's a book that I recommend called Necessary Exits. It might be Necessary Endings, actually.
Endings. Yeah. Yep.
But it's a really, really great book to kind of help explain some of that and help you through those processes. But I have a tendency to be a person who thinks that I can fix a lot of people because it's just a joy. And so I've been guilty in the past of hanging on too long,
Sure.
when it was really just time to make that decision. So it is a fine line, but knowing the person, looking at the entire body of work and giving it everything you've got will help you sleep a lot better at night. That's for sure.
Yeah. No, that's a great book. It talks about seasons, and not everything stays the same way. Sometimes someone's not always meant to be with you forever. That's okay. You've been around a lot of high performing organizations, obviously, training a lot of them. What are 2 to 3 things companies with great cultures do that allows them to enjoy long-term success? So there's certain things that always stick out to you, certain themes.
Yeah. The first thing is they have a real idea of who they want to be and where they're going. They're not just floating off seeing what happens this year. They've got a plan for the next 2 to 3 to 5 years, and everybody has a pretty good understanding of what that plan is. They have a vision out there that people can run for, and then too, they have a sense of family. We say it a lot, but I have noticed, especially with our customers, when I go out and visit, a lot of them truly do embrace the idea that they're a family, and that's important. But also, they're not afraid to have hard conversations with each other.
Right.
Everybody wants to be family until it comes time to do what family does. And sometimes family, you know what I mean? Sometimes family has to have a difficult talk. But I think when you've got the right culture, which we've witnessed, it makes that conversation easier because at the end of this, we're going to come to a resolution that's going to be good for both of us. And that kind of takes the tension away from some of those hard conversations. But those are some things that I notice, a lot with some good companies that we deal with.
Kind of to put a bow on this part of the conversation, what do you ultimately hope people gain going to the culture-based growth class?
I hope people see that they do already have a culture. You're not building from nothing. You have a culture. It's just a matter of what that culture is and if that's something that you can be proud of and you want to hang your hat on. I want people to see that you're not as bad as you think you are. You're not as far behind the game as you think you are. That there's that this is totally doable, and then it's not just a buzzword. It actually matters. But also I want people to walk away with the tools to be able to find some really, really great people, and to hold on to the really great people they have. That's the whole idea of this thing, because it's, if we don't close the back door of people leaving, or we're constantly burning through new people, that does us no good. So just becoming something that they can be proud of, something that maybe creating some vision that they can't see yet, and helping it through that.
That's good stuff. And that class, again, I think it's March 18th and 19th. It's 2 days before our expo starts. It's in Dallas. It'll sell out, even though I know we'll probably have 50 seats or something, because the demand, we try to stretch it as best we can to accommodate everyone. But at some point, the fire marshal gets on us. So be sure to register for that. Speaking of expos, you spoke at our last expo, which was in October in Temecula. Gave a great keynote presentation on building trust with your team. And you can obviously tell me if I'm wrong, but I always feel like trust is such a crucial component in having a company built on a strong culture, right? You were talking about, you can have an honest conversation with someone that's not doing well because you know them, because you spent that time, and you have trust in one another. So yeah, by the way, if you guys haven't watched Brandon's presentation, if you weren't there live, go to the hub. It's our website, our member website. That video's there. It's a great resource for managers, for owners.
Support for this podcast comes from Goodman. There's a good reason that Goodman is one of the biggest names in cooling, heating, and energy-efficient home comfort. The brand has been around for over 4 decades and continues to produce one of the best values for high-quality HVAC equipment in the industry. It's easy to sell, install, and maintain. Goodman's continuous efforts have helped contribute to the success of many HVAC contractors like you. Goodman produces a complete line of residential ducted split systems and packaged units. The company's product line is supported by numerous technology enhancements, including the award-winning AlumaFin 7 evaporator coil. This evaporator coil provides an efficient option for installations in space-constrained homes. The drain pan and cabinet door design provide enhanced coil reliability, offering homeowners the peace of mind they deserve. Select Goodman equipment comes with Comfort Bridge technology, which allows the system to be connected to any 24-volt thermostat. With Comfort Bridge, contractors have access to the Cool Cloud app, which helps them connect, configure, and diagnose the system wirelessly. It's no wonder millions of homeowners say, "Thank goodness for Goodman." Look for and be sure to follow Goodman on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.
Brandon, you had shared a personal story about an old boss and one of your biggest mentors. He said that a client owed you guys $50,000, and he kind of tasked you to collect it. Would you kind of mind sharing with the audience what were some of the takeaways from that experience? It was a pretty interesting story.
Yeah, it was definitely an experience. I'll say that much. It was the largest amount of, when you're 25 years old, probably when it happened, and just getting into the idea of what a business looks like from that level, and you're asked to go collect $50,000, which is a ton of money. It still is today. It was a lot larger, at that age.
Sure.
It was intimidating, to say the least, but I was willing to try it. And just the idea that he had the trust in me that I could pull it off, first of all, was huge. But that came from the relationship that we had built over those several years together. And in his mind, was not near as big a deal as it was in mine. So,
right.
I went out to get it, and when I walked in that room, Bob, it was like everything was made out of. Everything was wood grain, which was a big way to set up your office back then. Mirrors everywhere, chandeliers. I was out of my league for sure. But I had on my best suit at the time, which I think cost me like $99 or something. It was like, well, 2-for-1 suits. And I I came in and sat across the table, and it was really my first experience with how brutal the business world can be. In my mind, we would have a very civilized conversation, that there would be no rebuttal, that we would work out a plan. And so that was in my head walking in, and I experienced something completely different. I mean, this guy just ripped me to shreds. He called me every name in the book, and it was like, whoa, there are people who are not nice in this world. I knew that, but I didn't know that, especially on that level, you don't expect someone to be as unprofessional as they were. But I stuck to my guns and had all the proof and did everything that I thought that he would do. Going back to what you're saying about culture and core values gives us an opportunity to respond in a way that we feel like our leadership would, because we know what we're about. And so I held true to that. And when I got back to the office, ultimately I ended up with a $50,000 check and got back to the office. Well, that guy had already called my boss. And I overheard the conversation that they were having, and he was accusing me of doing the very things that he did. And, one of the greatest compliments I've ever received to this day was when I heard my boss say, "I know Brandon," and he didn't say that. Yeah. And hung up the phone. And that meant a lot to me, because you work hard to build a reputation that's based on character, that's based on integrity. And to know that someone valued and appreciated that and believed that as much as I did was a huge deal for me. And what it did was just reinforced that all of my loyalties up until that point were correct. That the things that I had, sacrificed and worked hard to achieve meant something to somebody other than me. Which I think ultimately, when people are doing any job, they want to know that what they're doing makes a difference, and that other people see it as valuable as much as you do. And so, in any culture, I think it's important to understand that nobody wakes up today and goes, "You know what? I think I'll just go be mediocre. I think I'm going to do the very least." People strive to do the very best. That's something that we can understand about all humans, is that we want to do our best and we want to make an impact. If we're experiencing the very least in an employee, chances are because we didn't recognize their best. And when their best wasn't of value to you, what you got, your result was their least.
Yeah.
That's what I see, all the time.
That's interesting. I know a big part of, talking about trust in that keynote speech, you had talked about to create trust, you have to give something, or you have to give people something to think, to feel, and decide. I'd written that down, and I thought that was very interesting, an interesting thought, in terms of how to build trust. And just like your boss trusted you, and then you've trusted him, and that's why he had your back, and then you're like, I'm working for the right guy. So what does that mean exactly? Give someone something to think, feel, and decide. What does that mean?
That has everything to do with the way that we communicate with each other. Any message that you're trying to deliver that you want people to understand, it has to have those three components in it. You have to engage their mind in what they're doing, or what you're saying, so that you get those creative juices flowing. When a person's mind is engaged, then everything else flows through what we think. The old adage is, as a man thinks, so is he. That is who you are. And so if we can engage that brain and that mind in a conversation, or in a vision, or in a whatever, we have a better chance of seeing the fulfillment of it. And then you have to give them something to feel, something to engage their emotions, because it's our emotions that drive us to decision more than any other element of who we are. And once you develop their mindset, once you engage their mind, you engage their emotions, you want them to ultimately come to a decision. You want there to be a shift in operation, or decide that yes, this is the right thing, or no, it's not, and here's why. But building on that has everything to do with the way that we communicate to people. We hear in our trainings all the time, the number one thing when we say, "What would you like to take away from this training?" before we ever get started, the number one thing people say is, "I want to be a better communicator." And that is something that that is unique to, not unique, it's universal to every person, I think, that wants to communicate on a level that is that people understand what you're saying. Most of the time, it's not because we are not good at speaking, or it's not what we're saying that is the problem. Most of the time, our communication problem starts when we didn't listen in the beginning. If you notice a person who has a hearing defect, something, or develops over time, a hearing thing, ultimately it affects their speech. And the same is true, but it's universal. If you're not hearing correctly, you won't communicate correctly. And we think that we're just falling short because we're poor communicators and people aren't getting this because I'm not saying it right. Maybe, and that's part of it, and you should work on that. But the majority of it is that you weren't listening to what was important anyway. That we developed an idea on what we wanted people to believe, and we ran with that rather than what people actually need and want.
Yeah, that's interesting. Another key concept that you had shared in that keynote was the idea of the 3 B's: belong, believe, and behave. So to earn someone's trust as the leader, you have to make them feel like they belong, believe, and behave. And I want to talk about what each of those mean a little bit. So let's dig into belong. How do you make people feel like they belong? They belong to a team. They belong to part of your organization, part of who you are and what you are.
Yeah. Well, it starts again, like I said, with a real honest look at who we are to begin with. I can't ask you to belong to something that I'm not sure I belong to,
Right.
Belonging has everything to do with being inclusive of a person. Businesses spend billions of dollars a year trying to perfect inclusion. In fact, what it does is I think that the statistics were that it raises an employee's production by over 200% when that sense of belonging is there. It's the reason why we have clubhouses when we were kids. You remember?
Sure.
And our first response was, if they did something we didn't like, was, you can't be in my club. Yeah, because we base whether a person belongs on how they behave. We've got it backwards, man. People don't know how to behave until they understand that they belong. Yeah, that's the truth. And you'll get much more out of a person when they feel like they're doing it for a team, for you, for something other than a paycheck. And so that sense of belonging kind of takes all that away. Now it's not just my idea of what I want to do in a career. It's our idea of what we want to do with this company. And so that's the major difference. But things like just taking a real interest in who they are outside of work, making sure that they understand that what they do matters, whatever that looks like, if it's a simple comment, if it's a handwritten letter, if it's a thank you, whatever it is, just continuing to encourage them. Allowing them to make mistakes is a big one.
I agree.
If I feel like I can't make a mistake, if I feel like my entire being with you hinges on whether or not I screw something up, man, that's the behavior that you're going to get from that is far less than it would be otherwise. So belonging is super important.
Yeah, no, it's amazing how many successful owners I've interviewed the last year that have talked about allowing their people to make mistakes and letting them know, I expect you to make mistakes, right? You can't get the best out of somebody if they're going to operate out of fear. So that's a great nugget. The second point you mentioned was believe, and you talked about the different concepts and how to create that belief. And one's being intentional. I think you started talking about what being intentional was just a moment ago, but maybe talk a little bit more about what being intentional is and how to create that sense of belief.
Being intentional means, it means a lot of things. And I think intention is part of if you consider the business like an airplane that runs off of 2 engines, one of those engines has to be intentional. It has to be the intent of doing things on purpose. And if you have a sense of belief within what you're doing is right, then you will be intentional about that. If a technician goes in and they're willing to walk away from a deal, and it's easy for them to walk away and just, I'll try again the next one. But if we boil that down to what that really is, it's a belief that maybe I'm not the best person for this and maybe someone else is better. But if you believe that you're the best solution for them, then that will cause you to hang in there and maybe keep trying and keep pushing and do some things that you wouldn't normally because you actually believe in something. And
Right.
and being intentional about what we believe in is something that you're just constantly reinforcing. It's not just something that we talk about once a year in our company kickoff meeting. It is an all the time thing that we're constantly reinforcing and being intentional about making sure that people are doing things for the right reasons.
Yeah.
Not just because it's profitable. That's great, but profit is never the reason.
Right.
Being effective, being helpful, being impactful is the reason. Profit is simply the result of you doing those things intentionally.
Right. Another concept you had mentioned in that idea of generating belief is this thought of being vulnerable with your people.
Mm-hmm.
And I want you to talk about, because something I was like, it's great because, right, you create trust through being vulnerable and having honest conversations. But you also, as a leader and a manager, you have to be accountable. You keep other people accountable. Excuse me. So how do you manage being vulnerable while also keeping people accountable? How do you manage that? That aspect of it.
It can be a slippery slope because we
Sure.
we want to be close to our people. No one doesn't desire a relationship with people that we spend so much time with. And sometimes there's a fine line between, yes, we are close, and yes, you do know a lot about me, but we still have to get the job done. It's a juggling a thing that we constantly juggle. But when I say being vulnerable, I mean being open to not being perfect, to give them something to strive toward or something to admire or want to become. Because in leadership, that's basically what we're doing is we're creating other little us's. We're just duplicating parts of ourselves in other people. So you're either going to duplicate the things that you want them to think you are, or you're going to duplicate the things that you actually are.
Yeah.
And that requires you to be a little bit vulnerable. And going back to making mistakes, it's important for an owner to pull somebody under their arm and say, yeah, that was a mistake. But let me tell you about a time where I made a mistake. Let me tell you how I screwed it up. And it's okay to do that. Some leaders have this space of they have to be stone-faced all the time, and people can't relate to that. People can't relate to that perfection and that never make a mistake and that never do anything. And the best leaders I know are relatable. They're relatable to people, and it opens you up to who that person really is and the truth of what we really want to accomplish. It all has to do with being honest with yourself, being honest with your people, and being able to show a little bit of vulnerability is never a bad thing. That doesn't mean that we don't hold them accountable to the KPIs that we set in front of them. It just means that those KPIs mean more to them because they're doing it for a real person instead of for, what we want them to think we are.
A great story you shared, and I had to touch on it because I really liked it, in that concept of belief and believe is you come back to you left your company you'd been with for a while, you come back and you notice the culture had kind of eroded. People were not taking care of the place, and the bathroom was a disaster.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought this was just really admirable, and talk about sending a message without saying a word, right? So I was like, I really was, I don't want to say touched, I didn't tear up, but I was really impacted by the story. And I thought it was like, we got to bring this up because it's a great leadership story, right? From not being the guy that's like pounding his chest saying you got to do things a certain way. It's acting out what you believe. So can you kind of share with everyone that story if you don't mind?
Sure. When I had come back to the linen company after a short hiatus of doing something different, I noticed that the condition of the building itself was not something to be proud of. Our break room was an absolute nightmare. And we had 85 some odd employees that used that break room on a day-to-day basis for lunch breaks and this kind of thing. I went into the restroom and it was absolutely horrible. Somebody had started a booger collection on the wall. This is no joke. And I mean, they hadn't been blowing off this thing for like 3 months. I mean, it was impressive. I could have got on the bullhorn or the loudspeaker and, told everybody could have called a meeting and do that kind of thing. But that's typical. That's something that they don't respond to, obviously.
Sure.
So I went home, I put on one of my best suits, tie the whole thing, good shoes, came in, walked past everybody, got the cleaning supplies and got down on my hands and knees, and I scrubbed the break room floor. And I went in and I scrubbed the bathroom, and I scrubbed the men's bathroom. I scrubbed the ladies, but absolutely ruined the clothes I had on. I was a mess, and they watched me do it. And then I never had to do it again. I never had to walk through there and people be intimidated by who I was. I never had to walk through there and people feel like they had to get back to work just because I was watching. They got back to work because I wasn't watching. They got back to work because they had this respect for a person who, if I think it's important, you'll think it's important.
Right.
And I don't have to address that in an ugly way. All I have to do is show you what it means to me. And because you mean something to me, I'm willing to do it. And
It was
changing.
It was a great story about, leading by just, hey, this is what I expect. I don't need to say it. I just need to do it. You need to live out what means to you.
Sure.
The last concept, the last B was behave. And it was interesting because you talked about it from the angle of giving employees discretion in allowing them to try new things, right? And that's a scary thing, especially in our industry and our folks who are used to being on their own and doing things on their own, because we deal with a lot of small operators, plenty of big ones too, but everyone starts from somewhere. And that big step from small to big is allowing others to do things. So what advice would you have for members or non-members who are great people, mind you? They're not bad people because they're controlling. It's just where they've come from, but they got to overcome that, right? They have to learn to trust other people and allow them to make mistakes. We talked about that earlier, and allow them to do and try different things. So how do you kind of get over that mindset of only I'm the one that can do X, Y, or Z, or Joe, you have to do it this thing this certain way that I've been doing it this way for the last 5 years? How do you overcome that big hurdle that we see happen with a lot of people?
Yeah. Well, there's different reasons why people do those things. If it's a safety issue that you're trying to direct someone in, obviously you don't stick that fork in that socket. I mean, that's something that you kind of have to go, this is the way it's always been done. So please don't do that, because there's something I'm trying to stop you from, something that's harmful to you. At that point, you have to step in and stick to your guns. But if you're a person who's setting yourself up as the only one who can accomplish something, or the only one who's ever going to be great at this, all you're really doing is ensuring that when you're gone, this thing's over with. You've become the ceiling. It goes no further than you. And people won't stick with you. That's the truth. They'll go find somewhere else where they can grow and do that. But it goes back to belonging and believing. When a person knows that they belong, then they'll start to believe. When they start to believe, they'll start to behave. And so this change of behavior doesn't come from us making them do anything. This change of behavior comes from us saying, here's who we are, here's where we're going, here's what we believe. How do you contribute to this overall picture? And allowing them the freedom to bring their gifts and their strengths to the table, and not being intimidated by someone who might do it better than you. I have made peace with the fact a long time ago that there will be people who come along that people would much rather hear from than me. I'm not ever going to be the most talented person to do what I do. I got to be okay with that. I got to be okay with helping them along the way, because as leaders, we're either developing people or we're not. And when you develop people, you have to be okay with the fact that they might be a little more talented, or they might have an idea that actually works. If it's not something that's going to be harmful or damaging, let them run and see what happens. And then you get that teachable moment at the end. Either this worked or it didn't, and here's why. Either way, you're developing that person's character. It's a development thing more than a being in charge and do it the way I do it. Your way may have been successful, and that's great, and no one's taking anything away from you for that. But this way might actually be successful as well. And if we pay attention to what people are saying, we might actually learn something. I'm smart enough to know that I'm not smart enough. And that's I think where we kind of have to be. It's
amazing. Yeah, the great business owners and leaders I've ever talked to or interviewed, they all say, I am not the smartest person in my company. I'm not the most talented. I just try to find those people that are, and then nurture them, right? And try to create a strong culture that allows them to build some trust, that we can trust one another, and we want to march together towards a greater goal. That seems to be the thing that works.
Yeah. If I can't see my face in the picture that you've created for this company, I'm not going to stay. There has to be a great vision, but I also have to see where I contribute and where I tie in. And a lot of that is an exploratory process. You get a chance to do this, and then we'll see if it worked or whether it didn't, but it's all this is exploratory, and it's not a perfect science. It's because you're dealing with humans. It'll still be one day great, and the other day they're going to hate you. But at the end of the day, you have to keep that end game in mind. We start with the end in mind. Here's where we're trying to get, and we got to be willing to allow some flexibility on how we get there.
Absolutely. It's funny, all the times I've talked to people, or especially when I was really learning the business, and I talked to great operators. How do you know when it's the right time to do this or the right time to do that? And they go, you just got to do it. And then you learn, right? And it's the same thing with building a culture or building trust in a business. You just got to kind of take that leap of faith that you guys watching this all took when you started your business. You just got to keep doing that and then learning from it. So anyway, so this has been fun, Brandon. I've really enjoyed chatting with you as always. You bring a lot of light and energy to the podcast. It's a nice change of pace from what we normally do. So thank you so much for your time, sir.
My great pleasure, Bob. Thanks for the invitation, and love you guys. It's going to be a good season.
Absolutely. Have a great one, Brandon. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks, Bob.
Support for this podcast comes from Redesign.co. Feeling overwhelmed by the ever-changing world of digital marketing? Redesign.co is here to simplify it for you. We focus on what matters, getting your business seen online. With our expertise and effective digital marketing solutions like Google paid ads and local SEO, we help your services get the attention they deserve. No jargon, no over-the-top promises, just solid strategies to boost your online presence. Let's team up and give your business the online boost it needs. Reach out to partner with Redesign.co and stand out to potential customers when and where they're looking. The Successful Contractor Podcast is part of the CertainPath family. CertainPath builds successful home service businesses and has for 23 years. We do it by providing contractors with a proven path to success, professional coaching, software solutions, and a member community of over 1,000 contractors just like you. Doubling your sales with a 20% net profit and an inspiring company culture is all possible. Let us show you the way. With CertainPath, success is made certain. Visit www.mycertainpath.com for more information.